Savvy Business Radio runs in syndication on 8 AM/FM stations nationwide, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out in a bigger way, call 732-474-7375 or email Christina at savvybusinessradio.com.
Is your company one of the 93% surveyed, indicating they are ineffective at forming strategy? Companies successful in forming strategy use a strategic decision process. Foresight Business Consulting is developing an online course that teaches a new strategic decision process. You can enroll as a founding member at a fabulous discount during Foresight's crowdfunding campaign. Visit the Lean Strategy Masters campaign page at bit.ly/Lean Strategy Masters or search for Lean Strategy Masters on Indiegogo.com. Our guest today is Dr. Larry Fedewa. He is a conservative commentator on social and political issues. He is also the author of over 150 Washington Times online columns and frequent guest on radio and television. He is also known as the early interpreter of the Donald Trump phenomena. Today, Dr. Fedewa joins us to share some of the current events that have happened in our culture and some of the ways we can make things better in our nation. Find out more about Dr. Fedewa by visiting Washington Times or reading his column online at mypoliticalinsights.com. Hi, Dr. Fedewa. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you today?
I'm just fine. The sun is shining and it's still February.
I know. Can you believe it? It's almost 60 degrees here in New York City. I can't believe it.
Especially after that big snowstorm, huh?
I know, it's nuts, but it's great to have you. You are joining us for our Heartbeat of the World segment, where we're going to hit on some of the greatest challenges facing the U.S. and the world. And I'm so happy to have you. You've worked with the Washington Post as a columnist, doing over 100 columns for them. You're a professor. You have so much to offer on the subject here. Before we go to all that, share a little bit about your background further with our audience.
Well, it's the Washington Times, not the Post.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's a big difference these days. It used to be that newspapers were relatively neutral, but these days they're pretty either left or right, and I'm a little closer to the right than I am to the left, so that's why I'm with the Times. But yeah, basically I've had a number of careers. I started out as a school teacher, and then I became a professor and a dean, and I founded a college, became a college president for a while. Then I went into business with the Control Data Corporation and traveled the world for them. Started a couple of schools there. And then I came to Washington and started another company, which I had for 23 years, really. So that was a federal contracting company, which gave me an opportunity to really see the way the government works up close and personal. So after I sold that, and I was thinking about trying to retire, and I somehow got seduced into writing columns for the Washington Times.
Wow.
And that ever since.
That's amazing. And so you have a unique perspective on the government, actually working with them for many years and such.
Yes, and also I think that was very helpful in trying to understand Donald Trump. It was my business background more than my government background, but I understood where he was coming from, I think, better than most of the people that were trying to figure him out.
Yeah.
And
It's so interesting, Dr. Fedewa, because I'd heard people say to me, well, this isn't going to work. He's just a business guy. He's going to back out. And I'm like, I've seen Donald. I lived in New York most of my life, and I've seen him around, and he's not the kind of guy. I mean, when he goes in, it's all or nothing. He's it kind of like, I'm in it to win, right? But I wasn't sure quite how I felt about it when he first entered into the race. But my first initial, if I could have anyone in the world, it would probably be Ron Paul. And then when we had the nominees on stage, it was probably going to be Ben Carson. But he turned out to be someone I really gradually moved towards. But there's a lot of animosity either on one side or on the other. Why do you think there's just so much polarity between understanding President Trump?
Well, I just wrote a column about that. I call it Dissecting the Dissenters. It is a hard thing to really capture in a brief statement, because there are so many different people and causes and groups that are in opposition. And so I categorize them in three ways. I call them the true believers, and the pragmatists, and the anarchists. And the true believers, I think, basically, they thought that Barack Obama was on the right track. They recognized that there were some problems, but they feel that the key to Americans' future and the culture of America is in what they call diversity, namely the equal, not only treatment, but the equal opportunity and equal power for everybody, every group, every nationality, every tribe, everybody in the world, in fact. It's kind of a universal religion, really. It's this cause. They believe in it so strongly. They thought they had won because Barack Obama won that second election, and they thought that now this is the new course for America. And when the average Americans revolted and elected Donald Trump, they were just absolutely devastated. They could not believe it. They still can't. And they're now trying very difficult to discredit him. And in fact, some of the measures that are being undertaken are really quite drastic. So the true believers are never going to like Trump. And it just happens that the one ethnic group that is accused of defying diversity the most are the European Americans, the white Americans. And the worst of those are the white males, because of slavery and American male dominance. So you get a lot of women that are against Trump, and the real extremists against all white male, in fact, all males. And then, of course, the civil rights people are also tend to be trying to recover from slavery. So, and what happens is Donald Trump is, by appearance and style, is a convenient stereotype for white males. And so I think that's the source of some of the opposition.
Wow.
Then
it's really kind of scary to me, because it's so polarized, and I think both sides actually, whether you're super extreme for Donald or not for Donald J. Trump, that it's really not very realistic on either side on how they're seeing things. They're kind of seeing either totally he's the devil or totally he's God, and actually he's a human being who can do, make mistakes or not. But why do you think there's become such polarization? From my perspective, I thought perhaps the media might have played a part in it by kind of really making it either one or instead of seeing that, you can play into really liking some of his policies, but not all of them. But bottom line, there was one candidate or the other that was going to be best for our country. What do you think on this topic?
Well, I think that I think you're right. But I think that a lot of the press are true believers, and they come into this category I was just describing. They are absolutely so devastated about the idea that the American public has revolted against their idea that diversity is the main principle of policy. that they are basically some knowingly and some even unknowingly are in a terrific cabal against anything that Trump does. And there, some of the theories are really quite scary. For example, you got the California governor says that he wants to make a sanctuary state. Well, a sanctuary state would mean that the state law would forbid municipalities from following federal law. Now then some people jump to the next step, and that is, well, why don't we secede from the union? Of course, we had that one time, and we ended up with 650,000 casualties in the Civil War, and that is very, very significant talk, really. But you also have the pragmatists. The pragmatists are the people that don't like. They've always liked the way they thought the way things were going was pretty good, and they don't want to jump off into the deep with a whole new approach to government.
Yeah.
They don't like Trump anyway because of his. You talk about his feet of clay. He definitely has feet of clay. But for those people, and this is most of the Democrat politicians, I think, if they do not succeed in stopping him, and if in fact his ideas really turn out to produce a roaring economy and a lot of good things, I think gradually they will come back to being a more bipartisan approach. But then you've got the anarchists, and the anarchists that's what they are, anarchists. They do believe in anarchy. You've got this Black Bloc group, which is it's been around for a long time, but it's been revived now.
Yeah.
These are the young guys that get dressed all in black with the black masks and the black hoods, and they are really precipitating a lot of the violence that we see in these demonstrations.
Yeah.
They go in there specifically with the idea of taking what might be a peaceful demonstration and turning it into a riot.
Wow.
And they are they've been very effective in Ferguson and Baltimore and Berkeley a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so those are the people that I think we have to stop.
Yes.
As long as the demonstrators are peaceful, then that is their right as Americans to protest whatever they have to protest.
Well, there is a line between First Amendment right and protest and violence. When people say, "Well, it's my right to free protest," you're right. I mean, to speak, yes, it is. But to bash in someone's head or no, not so much. Burning trash cans, not so much. Destroy Starbucks, not really. That's destroying public property. So yeah, you're totally on target there. It's a little scary for me because where do we see America going here, and what could be the possible solutions? I had a wonderful guest come on last year who gave me a solution for myself to understand how to get a better grasp on this, and that was to really do all the transcripts of all of the debates, because I was at odds. I was like, I don't know who to vote for. And so by doing the transcripts, printing them out, reading them, and not looking at what the people are saying, the talking heads, listening to the media do their bites beforehand, and just listening to what each person had to say gave me a better idea of which one really reflected my point of view and where I would like to see the country go, and what I could feel really could help the country. Do you have any possible solutions on how we can maybe come together into maybe a more cohesive citizenry in the United States?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. We'd love to hear it.
If we can get the economy back up to 3 to 4% GDP, people are going to start having money in their pockets, and they're going to be too busy to be going around protesting all the time. They're going to be having a lot more joy in life.
I love that.
Right now, we have a lot of disaffected people, but in many cases, they are economic casualties, and they've been living for years with no raise. In many cases, they haven't been able to find a job, and there's bound to be discontent. And if you look at American history, that's my next column, by the way. Americans, all this peaceful transition of power has not always been that peaceful. You know, you can go way back to George Washington. He had to put down the Whiskey Rebellion in 1792 with troops. And he was so maligned after the 1794 election that it's one of the main reasons that he did not seek a third term, because he was so personally attacked that he just said, you know, I can't put up with this. And it went from there, it went downhill from there, basically. We've been having these problems since the beginning. So it's no time to panic. We've lived through all of it before, and we can live through it again.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear that we've been there before and we can get through it. From your perspective, because one of the things that came in number one as the thing that people were most concerned with in our audience was our educational system. And the other next thing on the target was really economy, and then war and terror. What would you say would be the number one crisis or issue facing the U.S. alone, and what would your solution be to it?
I think the fundamental problem of the United States right now is a $20 trillion national debt. And we can never pay that back under current circumstances. Yeah. So what it's done is, and this is really what I understood, and which kind of became my acceptance of Trump, was of all the people that were running for president, and there were a lot of them on both sides. Yeah. There's only one of them understood that we adopted, as Americans, we adopted in 1948 a way to responsibility for fighting the Cold War. And the fact that we were able over 50 years to fight to win the Cold War without a third World War III, that's a fundamentally amazing feat, and Americans should go down in history as having performed a major service for the world. Yeah. However, the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, and we didn't change anything. We kept going on as though we were still the wealthiest country in the world. Yeah. And we can't afford it. That's why we've been piling up this national debt. So we've got to change, and that's why a businessman comes in. The first thing he looks at is the budget, and that's what Trump did. And Trump was saying we've got to make some changes. We can no longer afford a no-cost nuclear shield for most of the world, or so-called fair trade, which in fact was fair to everybody but us. And when globalization came along, it was used to denude America of the whole manufacturing base. Yeah. So that was really why he's to me, he's the messenger, but the message is much more transcends the messenger.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that I found very beautiful when I heard him speak just the other day in a campaign. He kept saying, I'm the messenger. And his whole message, when you really listen to it, now I listen to it without all the chatter behind. And it's really a message. I'm here to serve. For the first time in a long time, we actually have someone in public office that is actually what they're supposed to be, a public servant. Now, another thing I thought of is the way our money structure has been since 1913 with the Federal Reserve. Do you see that we could ever get back to a sound money system, or is that even something we should consider?
Well, we surely should set it as a goal. But we have to be careful, because if we were at a gold standard right now, we would be like a big Greece. The only reason that we've been able to pile up this much debt is because we are the reserve currency of the world. We're the only country that can do it. No other country is the reserve currency of the world. We now have severe challenges to that. The IMF special drawing rights are now being considered an alternative international reserve currency.
Mhm.
The yuan of China. Now, the IMF, now the change came about 3 years ago,
Mhm.
when China was, up until then, China had about the same amount of voting rights in the IMF as Peru.
Mhm.
But it's the largest country in the world, so now they have equal to the United States.
Yeah.
And because of that, they've been, Christine Legrand, who is the head of the IMF, who now, by the way, is in trouble for corruption in France. Oh, Lord. Anyway, she, with the backing of the Chinese, has been promoting the special drawing rights as a reserve, and now the yuan itself, China is beginning to promote as an alternative. So if those things happen, if we can't slow that down, then we will be in serious trouble. But in the meantime, we have to start cutting down that national debt.
Yeah.
Seriously. Once we solve that problem, then I think getting back on the gold standard would keep us honest.
Mm. Yeah. Where do you see that would be the best cuts? Because from my perspective, looking at a lot of the things we have running in government, there's a lot of finagling going on, maybe underhanded deals where the money isn't always going to the functions or projects they should be going. How will we get that under control, that we know the money is being spent properly and that we're spending more efficiently?
Well, there are two sources of that kind of corruption.
Okay.
One source is Congress itself. Congress has used a strategy for getting the votes to pass various legislative items by giving special funding to various local projects that the congressman or the senator is interested in.
Yeah.
And therefore, they give him the new army base, or they give him the new tax exemption or whatever it is, and then he votes for them, and then they pass the legislation, and that's how it goes. The second, and probably the most pernicious influence on that is the bureaucracy itself. Each one of these legislative these laws and generates regulations, and the regulations are set by the bureaucracy, not by the Congress. And so the bureaucracy then takes over that concept, which might have been a very good idea. Good clean water, for example, is a very good idea. I mean, nobody's going to say, well, gee whiz, let's vote for dirty water. But then you put that into the EPA, and the EPA puts a whole series of regulations around it, which means every one of those regulations has to be enforced. And who's going to do the enforcing? The EPA is going to do the enforcing. So the EPA then needs more money because they have to have more enforcers. And if they have more enforcers and more lawyers and more lawsuits that they have to use to enforce the regulation, that means that those bureaucrats get more power and more money and more prestige, and they get a lifelong tenure of a very comfortable life.
Wow.
Now you take this throughout the entire government, and you find that we have all these pockets, thousands of pockets of bureaucratic teams who are enforcing various things that, frankly, by the time they get it all winnowed down, it's not really very important.
Yeah.
But they've made their living on it, and so they're committed. And boy, they will fight, and they're fighting Trump right now.
Yeah. And that's the sad part to me. I heard someone recently at a college campus, they interviewed her and said, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, well, I want to be a career politician. I was like, oh, great. I don't want to be a public servant that serves the people. I want to be a career politician where I get taken care of for the next 60 years. And that's a bit of a problem. Where do we begin to even resolve this when it's already set up a system where we have lobbyists and such? And now, I mean, from my perspective, it might start with the people becoming more educated about what the system's doing, but then how do we even reverse it and get them to take responsibility and not just spend money aimlessly?
Well, the first thing you do is you get a politician that doesn't owe anything to anybody. Somebody who financed his own campaign out of his own pocket, and he has nobody has a claim on him. That's the beginning. The second thing then is that you allow him to have the kind of people that he needs in each of these major areas that feels the same way he does. Mm-hmm. That they are not owed any, they don't owe anybody anything, but they owe the American people a true public service. Mm. And this, of course, is the businessman and military cabinet that President Trump is putting together.
Yes.
Which, of course, the Democrats are fighting tooth and nail. Mm. Because you have to realize that all of these bureaucracies that we just talked about a minute ago, mm-hmm. Are represented. They're what Trump calls the establishment. Mm-hmm. But the establishment is also the newspapers and the media, because the media depend upon these bureaucrats to get their stories and their leaks. And so they're very much in tune with each other. Mm-hmm. And of course, the third level of establishment are the politicians. And right now, you'd have to count almost the entire Democrat Party as a part of that establishment, even though they're rapidly disappearing as a viable political entity. So you got to start somewhere. And where do you start? You start with the way we started. We start with a guy that doesn't owe anybody anything, and by God, he's going to try to drain that swamp.
Yeah.
I don't know if he can do it, but he's at least trying.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I would just tell the audience, and I've done this, never take my word for it, your word for it, or anyone's word for it, but please do go out there and research into this. I mean, this is not, as you said, the first time this has happened. It happened all the way back from when George Washington was in office. And we, the people, can have a voice, but realize that some of the people out there that you think are fighting on your behalf aren't necessarily there for your on your behalf or care about your interests. And to just really have an open mind to look into that might be a first step for us to start gaining our country back, and might begin to make you realize that whereas President Trump is not the most perfect man to walk the face of the earth, but indeed his intentions, as I feel it and as I can feel when I hear him speak, are genuine and honest. He really, really does want to help our country. And it's a start. Can he fix everything? He's one person. He's not God, but he is one person. But together as a citizenry, if we work together and we educate ourselves, I think we can get our nation back and build our wealth and our country back.
Well, we made a start anyway. That's more than we could say in the last 50 years.
That's for sure. Well, it's been so fascinating having you come join us today, Dr. Fedewa. Let everyone know where they can find out more about you, connect with you.
Well, I suppose the two ways that are like everybody else. You either go to the Washington Times online community or go to Twitter, because funny as it sounds, that when we've got the most powerful people in the world that tweet, you think of little canaries tweeting, but yeah, we've got important people now that tweet, and I guess I'm on there like with all the rest of them, tweeting my head off.
Yeah. Well, that's the glory of today, and the greatness that is social media. I know often it's used for negativity and spreading gossip and stuff like that. But the one good thing I found about social media is that it's connected us and the world, made it much smaller, and we can really understand and get a picture of the world and get our message out there to other people. I mean, I myself have connected with people on Twitter and stayed at their house when I've gone to like Wisconsin. We've met a wonderful family there. We connected, and when we went to Air Venture, we got to stay with their family in Wisconsin. I mean, that wouldn't have happened 20 years ago if we didn't have Twitter. So it's an amazing tool.
Scary as it is.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again, Dr. Larry Fedewa, for coming here to Savvy Business Radio and sharing your great gifts and talents today on our Heartbeat of the World segment. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome.
Is your company one of the 93% surveyed, indicating they are ineffective at forming strategy? Companies successful in forming strategy use a strategic decision process. Foresight Business Consulting is developing an online course that teaches a new strategic decision process. You can enroll as a founding member at a fabulous discount during Foresight's crowdfunding campaign. Visit the Lean Strategy Masters campaign page at bit.ly/Lean Strategy Masters or search for Lean Strategy Masters on Indiegogo.com. After 5 years of creating exciting business content with amazing businesses from around the world, Savvy is now creating a new video series entitled Heartbeat of the World. This series will feature experts from around the globe. We will highlight and discuss some of the greatest challenges facing the U.S. and the world. Co-create with us and find out more at bit.ly/SavvyPatron.